Curling inside a squat rack. This is one of the biggest sins you can commit when it comes to proper gym etiquette. But even though I don't recommend it, curling inside a squat rack won't necessarily prevent you from building bigger biceps and seeing results. However, the 8 bicep training mistakes that I'm about to go over with you right now will definitely slow your progress and waste your time. A lot of beginners and even some people that are more advanced make these mistakes whenever training their arms over and over again. And the truth is, you just can't expect to see great results if you're constantly training your biceps incorrectly, especially because other muscles that you're not targeting will begin taking over the movement when you do it wrong. And the very first mistake shows us one of the most obvious examples of this, using too much momentum to swing the weight up. This happens to be one of the most common mistakes when it comes to training the biceps. I'm sure you've seen it multiple times at the gym, and you might have even made this mistake yourself before. Now, don't get me wrong, using some momentum or a little bit of cheating can actually be beneficial as long as it's only happening towards the end of your set on those last couple of reps when fatigue starts setting in, and as long as you're not excessively arcing your back while incorporating a little bit of what's known as body English. However, if you use too much momentum the whole way through an exercise like bicep curls, your back will start taking over since you'll be using your back to swing back and forth on every rep to help lift the weight up. This will take a lot of the tension off of your biceps and shift it over to your back, giving you more of a lower back workout rather than a bicep workout. And it isn't exactly a great back workout either. When you swing back, depending on how far back you go, you can hyperextend your spine and end up with a pretty nasty lower back injury. Also, you'll usually only require all that momentum when you're lifting a weight that's just too heavy. And the problem is that you still have to slow the weight down when lowering it in front of you. So as all that weight comes falling down, it'll have to be caught by your lower back if you're swinging back and forth on every rep, which will further increase your chance of getting an injury to your back. Instead, you want to make sure that you keep your back straight and concentrate on only using your biceps and only throwing in 1 or 2 sensible cheat reps at the end of every set. Another major mistake is flaring your elbows out while doing curls instead of keeping them locked in tight to your sides. When you flare your elbows out while doing curls, you start using both the front and the lateral head of your shoulder. You also incorporate your traps. In fact, it's very common to see a shrug before you see the elbows flare out, and that usually happens in the beginning because the weight is too heavy and the shrug helps to get that weight moving. This once again takes the pressure off of your biceps since your traps and shoulders start sharing the load. Also, the further your elbows flare out, the further your shoulders will rotate inward, putting them into a bad position that could potentially lead to a rotator cuff injury, especially since you'll be lifting a heavy weight while internally rotating your shoulders. The other problem with doing this is that you'll most likely end up getting a shorter range of motion. And that's actually the next mistake, not performing the majority of your bicep exercises with a full range of motion. This is especially common to see on preacher curls, but it can happen with any bicep exercise. It's also usually coupled with some of these other mistakes, like using too much momentum or flaring your elbows out, because once again, the amount of weight that's used is typically way too heavy, which leads to an overall breakdown in form. While there are some exercises like 21s where you would purposely work on overloading the bottom or the top half of the bicep curling motion, if you're not purposely going for an exercise that calls for a partial range of motion, you should be performing full reps. That means extending the arms all the way down to the point right before lockout. You don't want to fully lock out the arms, as this will put a lot of tension on your bicep tendon, especially as you get to heavier weight loads. But you still do want to get as close to full extension as possible, which usually means leaving only a slight bend in your elbow before curling the weight back up. Let's move on. The next mistake happens to be very similar to flaring your elbows out. I'm talking about driving your elbows too far forward and curling the weight way too high. Not only will you start using the front head of your shoulder to lift the weight up instead of just using your biceps, but chances are that at the end of each rep, you'll end up resting at the top of each contraction, since the barbell or dumbbell will end up directly over your collarbone with your forearm at a 90-degree angle to the floor. Normally, when you perform bicep curls correctly, you'll keep constant tension on the bicep muscle because even at the top of the contraction, it'll never reach that 90-degree angle. So your biceps will still have to support the weight the entire time. Now, just like our first mistake of using momentum, if this is your 8th rep and you want to squeeze out those last 2 reps, cheating a bit and resting at the top of the last 1 or 2 reps can wind up helping you complete those reps. But for the majority of your set, your shoulders should not be involved in the movement and your elbows should stay at your sides. If you notice that you can't do your reps without resting at the top, then you're probably using too much weight. Now, I don't want it to sound like I'm just bashing using heavy weight for bicep curls, because you should definitely be going heavy. If you're obsessing so much over having absolutely perfect form that you start using really light weights that aren't even challenging for you, then that's a huge mistake on its own, and that'll definitely kill your gains. One of the best ways to get your arms to grow happens to be the same exact way that you would get your chest, back, or legs to grow, by using heavier and heavier weight over time. If every time you come to the gym you simply easily rep out some curls with 5-pound dumbbells without ever increasing your weight load, your biceps will not grow. Yes, you should be performing curls with proper form, but you should also be struggling. Ideally, you want to select a weight load that's heavy enough to either make you fail by the end of your set or to require you to at least do a cheat rep by the 9th or 10th rep just to be able to squeeze that rep out. Progressive overload is essential for building bigger, stronger muscles, and one of the #1 ways to progressively overload your biceps is by increasing the intensity with heavier weight loads. A simple recommendation that'll help you get stronger is to shoot for around 8 to 10 reps for your bicep exercises, and then every time you get strong enough to hit that 10 rep mark, try to add a small 2.5-pound plate to each side of the bar. Adding the extra weight will probably make you drop back down to 7 or 8 reps, which is totally fine because it's a heavier weight load. And from that 7 or 8 reps, you can work on hitting that 10 rep mark over time with that heavier weight. Repeating this cycle over and over again is one of the #1 simple strategies to get your biceps to grow. Another big mistake is performing only one type of curling motion over and over again. This could mean that you're always taking a closer grip instead of a wider grip, or that you're always taking an underhand grip instead of a neutral grip or an overhand grip. Even though your bicep is one muscle, it has 2 heads, and to work both the long head as well as the short head effectively, you will have to incorporate curling exercises with your hands closer together as well as wider apart. Now, not only does your bicep have 2 heads, but you also have other muscles like your brachialis, which sits behind your bicep and helps your arm look wider. To target the brachialis better, you should incorporate neutral bicep exercises like barbell hammer curls and overhand bicep exercises like pronated spider curls. In general, it's always a good idea to mix things up every month or two to avoid pattern overload, to keep challenging your arms in new ways, and to keep seeing progress. This can be done in more ways than just spreading your hands further apart on the bar or turning your hands over. You'll also want to use different angles like you would with an incline dumbbell curl or on a preacher curl, for example. These different angles will once again help you overload certain parts of your bicep, ultimately helping you get stronger and build more muscle. Another way to switch things up is to go from doing straight sets where you do a set and then take a break to doing supersets where you would do 2 bicep exercises back to back with no break. One of my favorite ways to do this is to do a heavy set first for about 8 to 10 reps, and then once that fatigue sets in, immediately switch over to a light set for a high rep count like 20 reps. Another way to change it up is with drop sets, where you would start with a heavy weight for your first set, and then as soon as you finish that set, drop to a lighter weight immediately after to perform another set of the same exercise with no break. The bottom line is, make sure you're not doing the same things over and over again for months when training your arms. Let's move on to the next mistake, which is positioning your exercises in the wrong order. Now, this is definitely not the worst mistake you can make, but when you set up your workout, you want to position the bicep exercises that'll tax your body and your mind the most before you move on to the ones that aren't quite as exhausting and difficult. This is because you want to have as much energy as possible to go heavy on the exercises that'll help you grow the most. For example, an exercise like the barbell bicep curl allows you to load the bar with a lot of weight and has been considered a bicep mass builder for decades. It's definitely an exercise that you want to position closer to the beginning of your workout so you can really push yourself to go heavy on it. The easy bar preacher curl is another good example of an exercise that you would want to position more in the beginning of your workout. Now, just to clarify, I'm not saying that you can never position these exercises towards the end of your workout, but if you do, you'll definitely have to go lighter because they require so much effort and it's tough to lift as heavy as possible after fatigue has already set in. That's why, just like you would position compound exercises before isolation exercises, since they're bigger lifts that involve more energy, you want to do the same with your tougher bicep exercises. Great exercises to save for the end include things like concentration curls and cable exercises. These are great to incorporate after your biceps already start getting tired. Finally, the last mistake isn't necessarily a training mistake, but if you don't make sure that you're eating correctly, all your training will go to waste. First, to get any muscle in your body to grow, you'll want to make sure that you're taking in enough protein, carbs, and fats throughout the day. And you also want to make sure that you're choosing good sources for each of those macronutrients. Most people struggle with getting in enough of the right foods so they can still take in a surplus of calories without gaining a ton of fat in the process. And for some reason, some people are under the impression that you could still build muscle effectively in a deficit. But the truth is that after you experience some quick results when you first start training due to newbie gains, you will have to maintain a calorie surplus to effectively build muscle past that point. So to find out exactly what that means for you and your body, you can simply use my macronutrient calculator that's in the description below. It's totally free to use, and after you enter your stats, make sure you select the hard gainer option because that'll give you the ideal calorie surplus and macro targets that you should go for to bulk up and build more muscle. That's about it, guys. I really hope this video has helped you out. If it has, make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit that bell icon. Also, if you're looking for a very simplified approach for building up your biceps as well as other muscles in your body like your chest, your back, shoulders, and legs, and you want to skip all that trial and error, just visit my website where we have challenges designed to help you achieve your body transformation goals, whether that's building muscle or burning fat. You'll get a customizable meal plan that'll change as your metabolism adapts and changes throughout the entire program. You'll also get a full workout plan with a full video exercise library so you're never confused about what to do, as well as a recipe book and an accountability coach that'll be there to guide you through the entire process. To find out more, you can click the link below in the description, or you can visit my website directly at gravitytransformation.com. I'll see you guys soon.